G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I am of course Akalphalos, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Path of Champions, but not in the way you'd imagine it. That's because we're going to be doing a champion tier list today regarding the Path of Champions, and we're going to rank all of the champions that are available, all 30 champions, into specific categories, and I'm going to give you my opinion on them. Now, why has this video come about? Well, quite simply because of two reasons. Let me just quickly get over them real quick. The first reason is quite simply because today there was some sort of service disruption or service interference, whatever, regarding my ISP. Apparently there was some maintenance upgrade or something, so for the better half of the day my internet connection was down. I couldn't really do anything, and I was basically halfway recording, if I'm gonna be frank with you, halfway recording a run, and apparently I got disconnected from the game because of the issue, so the run was basically unsalvageable. So because of that, I decided we are actually gonna do something else today because it's currently late right now. The internet just came back like I think an hour ago. It's currently close to 12 in the morning right now at the time of this recording, so I don't think it's really conducive of me to actually do a full run at the present moment. So I thought, you know what, let's actually do a tier list, and this was actually a video that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. And this actually also brings me to the second reason of why I'm making this tier list here. One of you actually suggested that I make a champion tier list, and like I said, this was something that I've been wanting to do, so I thought let's put A and B together and actually create the video itself just specifically for today. Alright, so before we actually get into ranking these champions, I'd like to establish certain ground rules or guidelines, if you will, before we actually move forward. And I've actually fleshed out 3 specific criteria in order to rank these champions according to the ranks that I've given here. I probably should go over the ranks, but we'll go over that later. But yeah, the 3 specific ground rules, the 3 specific criteria are: first, experience; B, the star power; and C, ease of use. So in terms of experience, I think it's really self-explanatory. Experience encompasses how experienced I am with that specific champion, so how proficient I am in using that particular champion. Now do note this is based on my experience with the champion, so your mileage might vary. You might find a specific champion easier, which I might find difficult. I might find a specific champion easier that you may find difficult, and vice versa. So basically this is going to be based on one person. I will try to keep myself as unbiased as possible, but you know, this is going to be based on my particular experience. Moving on into the second criteria, which is the star powers, I'm also going to be basing these ranks on the star powers of certain champions. Now I do realize that a specific star power is going to benefit that specific champion. However, what I found as well is that certain star powers and certain champion pairings are much more, you know, overpowered compared to another. So I like to include that into the criteria and as well as the rank. Alright, in terms of the third criteria, which is ease of use, this is a really simple category because if you go into each champion overview in the Path of Champions, there is a marker that talks about the difficulty. So this difficulty is, in my opinion, not that accurate. That's because I found certain champions are actually far more easier than the difficulty lets on, and some of them are a little bit tougher than what they've actually showed. So I would like to establish my own system of difficulty, and as a result, all of these 3 working together will actually contribute to the rank of each champion here on this tier list. Alright, so another thing that I like to add here ties into the experience part. Now I have not unlocked certain champions and I have not played certain champions, so in order to substitute that, what I will be doing is I'll be basing them on my experience of playing them against the regular AI. So basically I will be taking my experience of using that particular champion, I will be combining that with what I know of the star powers, and I will give you my overall opinion. So again, before we get into it, like I said, this is based on my personal experience of the champion. Your mileage might vary, you may have a different opinion. So again, this is based on my own personal experience, so that means you might find certain champions too high up on the list or too far down on the list instead. Feel free to leave your thoughts down in the comment section down below. I welcome any discussion, and then we could have a chat about where certain champions should have been ranked. Alright, so let's also go over the ranks here real quick. I have S for too damn good, A for awesome, B for nice, thank you Michael Rosen, C for not bad, and D if I really had to. So no F's or E here because I think they are all decent and I don't think they deserve to be down in the F or E. The D is probably down to my personal preference of not liking a specific champion, and I believe there's already one in my mind here which I will get to in a second. But anyway, let's actually get this list started and let's start ranking these champions. So kicking things off, we are gonna go with Annie here. Now Annie is a really interesting champion. That's because if you go ahead and take a look at her overview in the Path of Champions, she is listed as having a balanced playstyle and a medium difficulty. Now in my opinion, that is not exactly accurate, because from my personal experience of playing Annie, she feels extremely aggressive. So I would say she feels more like an easy champion and a more aggressive playstyle champion. If we take a look at her star powers real quick, right? I am also going to be using only star power 2 and star power 3, so I will not be counting star power 1. So according to star power 2 here, +1 starring mana around start, create a fleeting Gall in hand. Star power 3 here, your spells and skills deal 2 extra damage. These are really good powers. The Fleeting Gall is gonna be good to progress Annie's level up, and the fact that you could get that early is really amazing, provided you could get Annie on the board at the same time as well. Also, for that second star power, if you combine that with a Luden's Tempest, Annie is essentially gonna be dealing a lot of damage whenever she attacks. And if you actually tried that Nautilus adventure last week, the one with the tough Ezreal mini boss, if you actually brought Annie into that damage output was nearly off the charts insane. So I think for that reason alone, Annie deserves to be an A. Now the reason why she is not getting into the S tier is quite simply because she is fairly weak. She is a cheap unit, so that means her health is kinda low. That means she is really susceptible to the Blade's Edge or the Mystic Shot. And I believe that those of you who actually brought Annie into the Ezreal battle against Nautilus in the last weekly adventures, I think you'll see where I'm coming from here. So for that reason alone, I'm putting Annie as an A. Alright, so moving on into Ashe. Ashe is going to be the first champion here that I am going to have to base on my experience against the AI. That's quite simply because I have not unlocked Ashe yet. So as things stand, I have not tried her in the Path of Champions. By going off the overview here, which states that she is a balanced champion as well as a medium difficulty champion, I am inclined to agree. That's quite simply because Ashe is aggressive at some times with the Frostbite, but with that in mind, we have to take a look at the star powers. Now her star power here is actually not bad. Everosen Spirit, which is the first star power, +1 starring mana when an ally kills a unit with 0 power, grant your ally +1/+1. Now this is actually really good, because if you couple that with her second power, which is the Frost Shot 2, round start, Frostbite the strongest enemy and give it vulnerable this round, this is gonna be a guaranteed kill almost every round. So I would say that Ashe is a fairly aggressive champion in the context of the Path of Champions, but is she aggressive enough to make the cut into S? Well, personally, in my opinion, I would say she's also down here in an A, and the reason for that is quite simply because of a cost. Now Ashe will level up really easily, I do not deny that, and because of a star power, she is gonna level up even faster. The problem here, however, is that she is a 4-cost champion, so that means she's probably gonna come on turn 3. So with that in mind, I think she's good, but probably not good enough to make it into the S grade. Alright, so next we're gonna move on to Bard. Now Bard is a really interesting one. So this is probably gonna be a fairly controversial opinion here, but frankly, I don't really like Bard. The reason why I don't like Bard is simply because I am not really good at playing him, and he also feels a little bit too slow for me. Now I know his shtick is about waiting for chimes to kick in and essentially beefing up your units, but I am someone who likes to play really aggressively from the get-go and close out battles easily. So if we take a look at his playstyle here, balance and medium, I am inclined to disagree with this. I feel like his playstyle is a little bit more defensive because we need to wait for him to actually come on and as well as get some chimes into the deck, and most importantly we also need to wait for the units to get extremely big in order to deal sustainable damage. And in my opinion, the medium difficulty is also a little bit of a misnomer. I think it's not exactly hard, but I would say it's somewhere in between. If there's a rank between medium and hard, I think Bard would be in there. That's at least the way I look at it. Now if we go into his star powers real quick, Cosmic Presence 1, +1 starting mana when you draw a card with chimes on it, plant a chime on a random card in your deck. Caretaker's Blessing 2, when you summon an ally with buff stats, granted 2 random keywords. I do not deny these are really good powers, and at the same time, Caretaker's Blessing 2, if you could get a evolution power which will actually give allies a +1/+1 for every keyword, that could be an insanely amazing Bard. However, you must bear in mind that the evolution power that I've mentioned is an epic power, so that means the odds of you getting it is kinda slim. And in terms of the powers overall, in my opinion, I just feel like he is kinda slow. So because of that fact alone, I'm trying my best not to be biased here, but because I don't really like Bard, I feel like I'm gonna put him at a D if I really had to. Again, I don't necessarily hate him. If I had to play him, I will. But if there were other options out there, I won't. That's the bottom line I'm trying to get at. Now Darius is probably my favorite champion out of this set. I will not try to be biased, but at the end of the day, I think I agree with the Noxian dogma, strength above all. So according to this overview here, Darius is aggressive and he is easy. I am inclined to believe that is quite simply because I have used him several times and he is definitely aggressive, he is definitely easy. All you have to do is you just have to play him or his units and essentially just keep attacking. You are gonna guarantee a win. So in terms of the star powers here real quick, +1 starting mana each round the first time you attack with 15+ total power, rally each round the first time you summon an ally, granted +4/+0 and overwhelm. These two are really aggressive star powers, and you are going to be rallying easily because the Darius deck as well as Darius himself is a really beefy deck. So you are going to be consistently triggering the rally, and at the same time with the overwhelm, you're going to be closing out games really easily. So for that fact alone, I'm also going to put Darius at an A. And the reason why Darius does not make the S cut is quite simply because, like Ashe, he is a really expensive unit. In fact, he is far more expensive unit, which is why I'm placing him behind Ashe. So Darius is a 6 cost champion, and we are not counting cost reduction that we are going to get from the Path of Champions, of course, because we have no way of knowing for certain that we will get a cost reduction. We're just going to have to assume that we don't. So if we don't get a cost reduction, Darius is going to come on at around turn 5, provided you have the +1 starting mana. Alright, so let's move on to Diana. So Diana is also a really aggressive champion. According to her overview here, she is aggressive and medium. I agree with the aggressive part, but I think I disagree with medium. She probably should be easy in my opinion. That's because first of all, she is a really cheap unit, and at 2 mana, she is probably going to come on for you extremely quickly, provided you have the second star power. And speaking of the star power, let's actually go over them right now. So the first star power here, +1 starting mana. When you play your first card each round, refill 1 mana. And the second star power, allies have Nightfall, grant me +2/+0 and quick attack. If I already have quick attack, grant me double attack instead. Now those of you who have actually caught my Aurelion Sol run with Diana, you will know how insanely easy Diana is. Almost every battle was a turn 1 kill or a turn 2 kill. So if you couple Diana with something like a Overwhelm or a Gale Force, you are going to be consistently attacking and you are going to be consistently doing massive damage. So for that fact alone, I am going to put Diana as our first S tier here because first of all, like I said, she's really cheap, she's really aggressive, and she can deal a lot of damage. So that's why she is going to be S tier in this particular tier list. Alright, so next we are going to be moving on into Evelynn. So Evelynn is a really interesting one. I have her unlocked in my game. Unfortunately, she is not at a high enough level for me to test it against a Sol or whatever. But based on my experience playing against lesser enemies, I feel like Evelynn is a really strong champion. Now, according to her overview here, she says she's a combo champion as well as hard difficulty. Well, I agree with the combo, but also at the same time, I would also say that she's fairly aggressive. However, I think combo takes precedent here because that's the way she just works out. So if we take a look at her star powers here, right? +1 starting mana the first time you kill a follower each round, create a fleeting copy of it in hand. So this is probably a consistent way of generating Husk, and as we all know, Husk is basically the entire shtick of Evelynn here. In terms of the second star power, when you level up an ally champion, grant allies everywhere +2/+2. This is also a really good power. That's because Evelynn is probably going to be leveling up at least 5 times, and because of that, you are probably going to be buffing your allies +2 5 times. So that's probably going to bring them up to a +10. Now, if you couple that up with relics like the Crown Guard Inheritance as well as the stun all enemies upon level up, which is the Tempest Blade, you are going to be clearing the board really easily with Evelynn. And even though she is a 4 cost unit, I believe she is deserving of the S tier. She is going to be underneath Diana, however, because again, her cost is 4, so I would say that she is probably going to take a while to get onto the board. Alright, so next up we have Garen. Now, Garen is also one of my favorite champions here in the game. Just like Darius, I think he is slightly under Darius for me, but Garen is one of my favorite champions because his mechanic is simple. All you have to do is strike. So we have a notice here, the pattern that I'm going for here really is efficiency and practicality. If a certain champion is easy to use and has a mechanic that is extremely beneficial that will close out games easily, I'm gonna rank that champion higher up on the list. So that is the pattern here in case you haven't noticed it. But anyway, coming back to Garen, so according to his overview here, he is listed as a balanced playstyle with an easy difficulty. Now, I am inclined to agree with this because most of the Demacian units in the deck is not really that aggressive. However, he is extremely easy to use, so this is definitely an accurate ranking in my opinion. If we go into the star powers real quick, Justice, +1 starting mana, round start, create a fleeting singles combat, Demacian Might 2, when an ally strikes, granted +2/+2. These are really good powers. So the singles combat will allow Garen to strike more consistently every round, and because of that, he is probably going to be leveling up really easily. So if you combine that with the Demacian Might 2, Garen is going to be a extremely beefy unit. And if you've caught my video here on the channel where I did an insane Garen build with 3 Curator's Gatebreakers, you'll know how much I admire the Garen. And because of that fact alone, Garen is going to fit into the A group, and he is also going to be a rank above Darius, quite simply because Garen is a cheaper unit by 1, Darius is a 6 cost, Garen is a 5 cost, which means he'll be on the board earlier and easier, and at the same time Garen has regeneration. So that means Garen will be able to survive more efficiently significantly compared to Darius, and I think that merits him a spot slightly above his Noxian counterpart. Alright, so moving on to Gnar. So Gnar is also another champion that I have not tried out in the path yet. That's quite simply because I have not have him unlocked. However, based on my personal experience, I am not the biggest fan of Gnar. I like him. He is aggressive enough for my taste, but what I don't really like is that he transforms back after round end. Now I know this is characteristic of Gnar. He turns back just like he does in League of Legends. I'm not saying it needs to be changed whatsoever. All I'm saying is that I am not the biggest fan of this feature. So if we take a look at his overview, right? Balance as well as medium. Again, I have not personally played him in the Path of Champions, so I cannot give a concrete opinion on that, but based on my experience against the AI, I feel he's a little bit more aggressive than balanced. That's because in order to progress his level up, as we all know, we need to deal damage to the Nexus every round, and his deck is really centered around that as well. So I would say that this is a little bit of a misnomer, but let's go ahead and take a look at the star powers instead. So +1 starting mana, round start create a wallop in hand. Round end, if you damage the enemy Nexus, grant all allies impact twice. Now these are really good powers. Round end, if you damage the enemy Nexus, grant all allies impact twice is gonna be great, because like I said, whenever we deal damage to a Nexus, Gnar is gonna level up. And if you couple that with a similar build to the Evelynn one, which I recommended, which was the Crown Guard Inheritance as well as the Tempest Blade, I think Gnar should be fairly aggressive for you. So for that fact alone, I'm gonna put down Gnar as our first B.
Nice.
He is nice, but I think there are probably better options out there. Okay, next in line is gonna be Gwen. Gwen is a really good champion. I will not deny that. So according to her overview here, she is listed as a combo champion as well as medium difficulty. I am inclined to agree with that. I would say that she is also slightly more aggressive, and in terms of her difficulty, I'm inclined to side with the medium difficulty here, so really I'm not going to dispute that. Now if we go into the star powers real quick, +1 starting mana when your leftmost attacker gains power from Hallowed, so that's the attacker towards right. Round start, summon a Ghastly Band. These two are insane powers, especially that first one. So if you put Gwen to the right of the leftmost attacker, a better way to probably rephrase that is to put Gwen as the second left attacker. You are not only going to get a Hallowed buff because of a card effect, you are going to get an additional Hallowed buff because of that power itself. So that means Gwen is going to be dealing a lot of damage. Now if you pair that up with decent relics like the Luden's Tempest, the Allies of Overwhelm, or even the Gale Force, or all three combined, you are going to be dealing a lot of damage with Gwen. That is the bottom line. And I think for that fact alone, I am going to put her into the S tier, and she's going to be above Evelynn because she deals far more damage consistently. Alright, so next up is going to be Illaoi. Now Illaoi is a really good champion as well. I believe I just covered her in the previous video, the previous ASOL run video, where I did a run with Illaoi. So I got a fairly aggressive Illaoi in that one, but I will try to assess this as a more standardized Illaoi. And what I mean by standardized Illaoi really is that an Illaoi that is a little bit more balanced, I would say, as the overview implies here, a balanced playstyle Illaoi, as well as a medium difficulty one. So again, I'm not going to dispute any of this because I kind of agree with it. Illaoi is heavily reliant on the tentacles to actually deal some good damage, and at the same time, the balanced playstyle is probably more accurate. You can definitely try to build her aggressively like I did in the previous video, but in terms of a more general playstyle, balance is definitely the right call on that. So if we take a look at her star powers here, +1 starting mana, round start grant the weakest enemy vulnerable when allies attack spawn 3. So like I said in that video as well, these two are really good powers. Now if you pair that up with something amazing like the Crown Guard Inheritance like I did, you are probably going to be doing a lot of consistent damage. So I think with that in mind, we are going to rank Illaoi at an A, and the reason why we're putting Illaoi at an A is quite simply because she is not as aggressive as these three champions up here, and also that's simply because she is too heavily reliant on tentacles. If you do not have enough tentacles, Illaoi won't do enough damage, and when Illaoi doesn't do enough damage, you are probably not going to win the game. Now moving on into the next champion, which is Jax. Jax is probably one of my favorite champions from the set. First of all, he is really aggressive. Secondly, he is easy to play in my opinion. And third of all, who doesn't love Jax? Anyway, let's take a look at his overview here. So he is listed as an aggressive playstyle champion, which I agree with. He is also listed as a hard difficulty champion, which I do not agree with. I believe he is easy. At the most, he should be medium. That's quite simply because his level up is really simple. All you have to do is strike with equipped allies, and his deck allows you to do that really easily. So if we take a look at his star powers here real quick, +1 starting mana when an equipped ally dies, draw 1. Allies have attack, grant me +1/+1. If I'm equipped, also grant my equipment +2 and a +0. So this is going to bring him up to a really good stat, especially with the Light of Icavia. So if you couple Jax with some really good relics like the Curator's Gatebreaker as well as the Gale Force, you are probably going to be doing a lot of good Nexus damage. And I think for that fact alone, Jax deserves to be in the S tier. And not only does he deserve to be in the S tier, I believe he deserves to be higher up than Diana. That's quite simply down to the level up itself. Jax level ups really easily with the equipped ally striking. Diana needs Nightfall happen in order to level up. Alright, so moving on next on to Jhin. So Jhin is also a really good champion. However, the downside I would say is that he is not exactly new player friendly. And the reason why I say that is because of his overview here, which says he's a combo champion as well as hard difficulty. I 100% agree with this from the perspective of a new player. You are probably going to need to get used to the way Jhin works. And frankly, even though I've been playing lore for quite some time, I too have certain troubles with Jhin, mainly keeping track of what's going on and what's not going on. So let's quickly take a look at his star powers here. So +1 storing mana when an ally plays a skill random +1/+1. For every 4 fast spell, slow spell or skill you play, create a 0-cost captive audience in hand. Now, I do not deny that these are really good powers to have on Jhin, especially that second one which will create a 0-cost captive audience. And what you can do is you can stun the enemy for 0 cost, and that basically allows you to attack really freely. However, like I said, the combo part is probably going to be a little bit of a problem for newer players. For experienced players or players who are really familiar with Jhin, you are probably not going to have too much trouble. But overall, I think I'm going to rank Jhin as a B. He is under nice because, again, like I said, he is really good with the stuns, I do not deny that, but he could be a little bit confusing if you have not played him for a long time or if you're just starting out this game. Alright, so let's move on into Jinx. Need I say more about Jinx? Jinx is a really aggressive champion. She is supposedly the starter champion of the entire Path of Champions, the gateway for more newer players coming into the game, and her star powers really complement that. And her overview really describes that. Aggressive and easy, that's the bottom line. Nothing much needs to be said. And her star powers really complement that. +1 starting mana when you level up a champion, create a super mega death rocket in hand. When you play or discard a card, deal 1 to the enemy nexus and 1 to a random enemy. So this is just gonna be brain dead damage, if you will. All you have to do is play cards or discard cards and you're gonna get guaranteed nexus damage. Now if you combine that with some really good relics as well, stuff like the discard, stuff like the loose cannon's payload, stuff like the Gale Force, stuff like the Curator's Gatebreaker, anything works really well with Jinx in my opinion, and you can't really go wrong with her. So for that fact alone, I'm gonna put her onto an S tier. That's quite simply because she is really aggressive, and I think she deserves to be above Gwen as well. That's quite simply because she deals consistent damage, reliable damage, and you can never go wrong with a Jinx. Alright, moving on, we have Kai'Sa. Now Kai'Sa is also a really fun champion to play. That's because all you need to do is you need to have keywords on her. So she is basically like a Victor, but well, probably more aggressive, at least in my opinion. Now in terms of the overview, she is listed as a combo and medium difficulty champion. And in terms of a star power here, +1 starting mana, allies with 3+ positive keywords at +2/+2. Round start, grant your strongest ally a random positive keyword. So this is basically just gonna accelerate Kai'Sa's level up. That's why I said that she's a really aggressive champion. So I think all things considered, I will be putting Kai'Sa down into the awesome group. Alright, so next up we have Kayn. Now Kayn is probably my favorite champion from the domination set. That's quite simply because I love the way he works. He is a really aggressive champion, a really strong champion as well if you play him correctly. Even though he is a 4-cost champion, he can have the potential to be a really aggressive champion. So if we take a look at his overview here, he is listed as balanced and medium. I would say he is also listed as aggressive, at least in my opinion. That's quite simply because when you get to Rast or the Shadow Assassin, you are going to be doing consistent nexus damage without question. In terms of the medium difficulty, I'm also inclined to agree with that. That's because if I'm being honest, Kayn himself is kinda useless. You need to get him up to a Rast or Shadow Assassin to only reap his benefits. See what I did there? Shadow Reaper, reap. Anyway, in terms of his star powers here, +1 starting mana each game. The first time an ally kills an enemy and survives, create a random darkened equipment in hand. It costs 2 less. When an allied unit kills another unit, give that +2/+2 and heal it to full. This is a really good power to have on Kayn, because this is basically similar to Garen's star powers. The only difference here being Garen needs to strike, Kayn needs to kill. And if you have his units at a high enough stat, I promise you, you are gonna win that game really easily with Kayn. And I think for that fact alone, I am gonna put him at an A, and I think he's probably gonna be above Garen for me. That's quite simply because he's fairly aggressive, and I think he can close out games a little bit more efficiently compared to Garen. Alright, moving on, we have Lee Sin. So Lee Sin is a decent champion in my opinion. His overview here states that he is a combo champion with a hard difficulty. Combo is definitely right for Lee Sin. Hard is also fairly right for Lee Sin. I would argue that he's probably somewhere towards medium, but I think hard is a fair enough description. In terms of his star power here, +1 starring mana, round start, create a fleeting twin disciples in hand. When you play your second spell in a round, give your strongest ally +8/+8 this round. That second star power is insane because that would essentially help you get out of a tough situation. Not much really needs to be said about Lee Sin if I'm gonna be honest. He is really good with the barrier and challenger, as well as fairly annoying if you're playing against him in the Path of Champions. Now I think with that in mind, we're gonna put Lee Sin in the B group. That's quite simply because, well, I need to fill up the B slot, and at the same time, I would say I like to play a little bit more aggressive than what Lee Sin offers. I know he is fairly aggressive, but I think I like to play a little bit more aggressive than that, so I think we're gonna put him in the B group for my personal taste. Alright, moving on to the next champion, Leona. So Leona is a fairly challenging champion in my opinion. That's quite simply because there are probably better options out there, namely Diana, but in terms of target champions, she's probably second best after Diana. And if we take a look at the overview here, which says that she's a balanced as well as an easy champion, I am inclined to disagree. Now I have unlocked Leona, but unfortunately I have not played enough of her yet because she is fairly weak for me at the moment. But according to what I've heard, I am inclined to believe that Leona is probably more defensive and at the same time a little bit more harder. I would say she's defensive playstyle as well as medium difficulty. If we take a look at her star powers here, +1 starring mana. When you level up an ally champion, create a Morning Light in hand, it costs 0. Allies have Daybreak, or when you activate another Daybreak, grant me +1/+1. These are kinda decent, I do not lie, but again, she is not that aggressive. And this is probably the main reason why I'm gonna put her down here in the C, not bad group. Alright, up next is gonna be Lux. So this is a fairly aggressive champion as well in my opinion, based on my experience. If we take a look at the overview however, it's stated to be a combo champion with a medium difficulty. Combo is correct because Lux needs to play spells to level up as well as get her decent buffs and whatnot. But aggression is also on the cards here because Lux itself feels really aggressive from what I've seen. Now let's take a look at her star powers. +1 starting mana. After you play 6+ mana of spells, create a 0-cost golden Aegis. Each round the first time you play a spell, refill mana up to its cost. These are really simple powers but also really good powers if you will. The golden Aegis is going to be a rally, and what's better than a 0-cost rally? And of course, as we all know, after Lux levels up, she has access to the Final Light, and you have a Luden's Tempest on that Final Light, you are going to be dealing a lot of damage. And I believe that is the only spell that has overwhelmed damage, so that means you should be able to deal consistent Nexus damage, and I think for that fact alone, I'm gonna put Lux up on the A scale. Okay, so now we are moving on into our next champion, Master Yi. So Master Yi is also one of my favorite champions from the set. I lied when I said Kayn was my favorite champion. I think both Master Yi and Kayn are my joint favorite champions from the Awakening set. So again, I have not actually played Master Yi because he is still locked for me. I did not have enough fragments to unlock him. So this is based on my personal experience of playing him against the AI, as well as certain times when I pick him up for my off-camera runs when I'm not recording something for the channel. So here he is listed as a combo playstyle with a medium difficulty. Now if we take a look at his star powers here, +1 starring mana, flow, give your strongest ally elusive this round. When you play a non-fleeting spell, create a 1-cost fleeting twin disciples in hand, flow, grant allies +1/+1. These are really good because they are buffing the stats of the units on the board as well as Master Yi himself if he is on the board, and I think this would actually help him level up much quicker. So I can't really say much for this because like I said, I have not personally tried him out yet on the Path of Champions. What I will say is that he looks like a really good champion, and I definitely think he should be in the A group in my opinion. That's quite simply because he seems to be fairly aggressive, and with the elusive you are probably going to be dealing a lot of good damage. And I think for that fact alone, he definitely warrants being in the A group. Alright, so moving on, we are going to be taking a look at Miss Fortune. Now Miss Fortune is probably going to be one of my favorite champions from the set. That's quite simply because she is fairly easy to use, she is really aggressive, and who does not like Miss Fortune? Anyway, I have no complaints on the overview here. Aggressive and easy is the accurate description. Let's move on into her star powers real quick. So +1 starring mana, when allies attack, draw a unit. Round start, summon a Powder Monkey. This is a really good power here for Miss Fortune. The Powder Monkey is going to be guaranteed damage every turn, and of course with the draw a unit, if you pick up a power that will actually benefit from that, I believe it's called the Higher Education, you are going to be doing consistent Nexus damage really easily. Couple Miss Fortune with a couple of useful relics like the Luden's Tempest, the Conquered Inheritance, the Tempest Blade, or the Allies of Overwhelm, you are going to be dealing a lot of consistent damage. In fact, she is so damn aggressive, you are going to shred Aurelion Soul in 2 turns, like I did in this video. Anyway, with that being said, I believe Miss Fortune is deserving of being in the S tier. Now she's probably going to be above Evelynn and underneath Gwen, quite simply because Gwen has a far easier level up than Misfortune, even though Misfortune is cheaper, and at the same time Gwen can deal much more damage than Misfortune, at least in my opinion. Okay, next up we have everyone's favorite ram, and that is gonna be Ornn. So Ornn is a really interesting character. That's because he is kinda expensive, he is a 7 cost unit, but he is insanely good if you play him the right way. So he is listed as a defensive as well as a medium difficulty champion here. I'm inclined to agree. That's because you have to bring Ornn onto the board in order to make something work, and at the same time I agree with the medium difficulty because the run itself is gonna be a little bit tough until Ornn comes onto the board. In terms of his star powers here, we have a +1 starting mana. The first time you play an ally or equipment that costs 4+ mana, manifest an equipment and reduce its cost by 2. And for a second star power, game start, summon an Ornn's Forge. The first time you forge each round, forge again. So this is a really good set of powers to have because every time you forge, you are going to get a +2/+2 instead of his standard +1/+1. However, the major drawback of this, like I said, is the fact that Ornn is going to come on really late in the game. I know cost reduction is a thing, but let's assume that we don't get any cost reduction. You're probably going to be stuck in the game waiting to play the Ornn, and if you don't have a mana gem, that could be a little bit problematic. And when it comes down to that, it's a matter of stalling out the turns. Though when Ornn does come on, he is definitely a game changer, but I would like to put him in the B group, and I like to put him underneath Gnar. And the reason for that is quite simply because of his cost. Up next, we have Tahm Kench. So Tahm Kench is another champion that I have locked in the game, which means I have not unlocked him yet, but I have some experience playing him back in the day when Bridgewater was first released, as well as several Path of Champions editions before that, where Tahm Kench was included. So I think, in my opinion, he is a really decent champion. According to the overview here, he is defensive as well as hard. Defensive, I would say, is an accurate description. Hard, I would say, is also fairly agreeable, although medium, I think, in my opinion, is a much more better fit. And the reason for that is quite simply because of his star powers here. These are really good powers, guys. That's because regardless of what unit you capture, follower or champion, you are going to be able to play it at a reduced cost, and at the same time, with the Grand +2/+2, you are going to be ensuring that a lot of your units survive. And because of that, I think I'm going to put Tahm Kench in the nice group. He is probably going to be above everyone else in the nice group. That's quite simply because he is cheap, and at the same time, his powers is a really good sell in my opinion. Moving on, we have Taliyah. So Taliyah is also a champion that I've only recently unlocked. I have not played her in the Path of Champions yet, but again, I'm gonna base this on my experience on playing her in general. Taliyah at the beginning isn't that great. That's quite simply because she does not have her level 2 ability. Her level 2 ability, however, is a really good skill in my opinion. And at the same time, you can couple that with a Luden's Tempest that will increase the damage of the skill, and you will deal a lot of good damage. However, that is going to be upon level 2. And to get to level 2, you will need several landmarks, and that is going to be a little bit problematic. Now, the problem here is not in the way Taliyah is played itself. The problem here is in the fact that you are going to have to weather the storm a little bit, and basically you won't have units to block. Landmarks, as we all know, can't block anything, so that basically means we are allowing ourselves an open nexus for the enemy to attack. So if we take a look at the playstyle here, balanced and hard, I am inclined to agree with this. Balance quite simply because Taliyah is somewhere between defensive and attacking, and the hard difficulty is a really good description of what I'm trying to get at here. The fact that we are going to be leaving our nexus open for enemies to attack because we need to summon landmarks to progress Taliyah's level up. Now if we take a look at the star powers here, +1 starting mana when an ally landmark is destroyed, grant allies +1/+0, game start, summon a hibernating rock bear, allies have +1/+1 and overwhelm. So these are decent powers, I do not deny, especially that second one. However, like I said, we need landmarks and consistent landmarks to progress Taliyah's level up. And again, the problem is not the mechanic of Taliyah's level up, it's the fact that we are leaving ourselves open for the AI to attack when we are trying to progress Taliyah's level up. So I think for that fact alone, for that simple fact alone, I am going to put Taliyah at a not bad. However, I think she should be above Leona. That's quite simply because when she does level up, she is going to be a really good pickup to have and a consistent damage dealer here. Next up, we have Satan himself, aka Teemo. Now he's listed here with a combo playstyle and a medium difficulty, and Teemo is definitely a right representation of that. Taking a look at his star powers, however, +1 starring mana, when the foe triggers poison puff caps, create a fleeting burst poison dart in hand. When allies attack, plant 10 poison puff caps on the foe stack. These are really aggressive powers. Essentially, Teemo is gonna level up easily, and at the same time, the puff caps are gonna deal a lot of damage. So I think all in all, Teemo deserves to be at least in the S tier. Quite simply because you are gonna be doing a lot of Nexus damage with Teemo, which I believe is good. Couple that with some decent relics like the Creator's Gatebreaker, which is a Nexus Strike, you are gonna be planting consistent puff caps every time you summon a Teemo. Alright, next up we have Varus. So Varus is arguably my favorite champion from the recent Domination set. He is a really strong champion from what I found. I have actually played Varus, I have actually unlocked him, and from my experience, I extremely like him. That's quite simply because of the fact of his star powers. Now, if we go over the overview first, he is a combo playstyle champion with a hard difficulty. Combo is accurate here, hard difficulty probably is not. Medium is probably a little bit more accurate here because all you need to do is you just need to make sure you survive long enough for Varus to come onto the board. And let me tell you, bringing on Varus is not that difficult. He is a 4-cost unit, so he should be able to come on really easily. So in terms of the star powers here, +1 starring mana, round start reduce the cost of a spell in your deck by 1, then create an exact fleeting copy of it in hand. When you target an ally with a single target spell, copy it onto the strongest ally. This is a really good set of powers here, especially that second star power, because if you give Varus the Redoubled Valor relic, what you could do is you could cast the Redoubled Valor on Varus, and chances are Varus is probably going to be your strongest unit. You are going to be doubling Varus's power and health, and once Varus levels up, he has access to the Overwhelm. You are going to be doing a lot of damage to a Nexus easily. So that's why I would say Varus deserves to at least be in the A tier as well. He probably deserves to be above Kayn in my opinion, and the reason why I'm putting him in the A tier is quite simply because of his cost. He is a 4-cost unit, which is fairly cheap. That means he will come on turn 3 provided you have the +1 starting mana. However, if you don't get any cost reduction, he will probably come on fairly later on in the game, but it shouldn't be really too big of a problem. Next up, we have Vayne. So Vayne is also a fairly new addition to the Path of Champions, of course. I have unlocked Vayne, and if I'm being honest about it, only yesterday, so I have not had the chance to play her yet. However, I have picked her up once when I was doing a run in the Path of Champions. She is a really good pickup, because after all, she gets to attack many times, and at the same time, Vayne is a really aggressive champion. As you can see here, she is listed as aggressive, and she is also listed as medium. Taking a look at her star powers here, +1 starring mana, when an ally is equipped, give Scout this round. Round start, if you have the attack token and fewer than 2 equipments in hand, create a golden spatula and grant it a random keyword. These are really good with Vayne because that will keep her attacking and essentially progress a level up. And if you couple that with the Condemn, you are looking at a decent amount of attacks every turn. However, because I do not have enough experience with Vayne, I am gonna have to put her in the A tier because I do not deny she is good, but unfortunately I cannot say for certain how good. Next up, we have Veigar. So Veigar, if I'm gonna be frank, is also another champion that I have not unlocked yet. That's quite simply because I do not have enough fragments. Now, in my opinion, Veigar is a decent champion. Going off his overview here in the Path of Champions, he is listed as defensive and medium difficulty. I'm inclined to agree. In terms of his star power, he has access to +1 starring mana, your darkness accelerates the burst, round start, create a darkness that costs 0 in hand. These are really decent powers. That's because the darkness is damage, and of course accelerating it to burst allows you to play it on the fly. However, as we all know, we need to wait for the darkness to deal enough or sufficient damage. However, I think with that being said, Veigar still warrants to be in the B category, slightly above Gnar, but underneath Jhin. For our next champion, we have Vi. So Vi is a really aggressive champion based on my personal experience. According to her overview here, she is listed as balanced and medium. Again, I'm inclined to agree, but I feel she is a little bit more aggressive. That's quite simply because once you take a look at her star powers here, +1 starting mana, game start, draw 2 cards that cost 2 or less, round start, grant your strongest ally +0, +2 and impact twice. This is a really good set of powers. Now you are probably gonna draw Vi in your hand at game start. So that means she's gonna be the one getting impact consistently, and once she does get an impact, once she comes on, you are gonna be dealing a lot of damage. Bottom line, Vi is really aggressive, and I'm inclined to put her in the S tier. She is probably one of my favorite champions to use, and I'm highly looking forward to use her into the Aurelion Sol here on the channel. Next up, we have the infamous wind shitter himself, and I am talking about Yasuo. So Yasuo is a really aggressive champion in my opinion, based on what I've seen in the Path of Champions. In his overview, he is listed as a defensive champion with medium difficulty. I am gonna do a complete 180 on this, and I'm gonna say he should be an aggressive champion with an easy difficulty. That's quite simply because if you have access to his star powers here, +1 starring mana, when an ally strikes granted +1 +0, round start stun the strongest enemy, you are gonna be dealing consistent damage with Yasuo, and once he levels up, you are gonna be dealing consistent kills with Yasuo. I think not much needs to be said about Yasuo here. I believe he deserves to be an S. Quite simply because he is a really good champion and extremely foreshadowed by the memes around him. Finally, we have come to the end and it's time to discuss the final champion, Yuumi. So, the infamous spam E-Cat. Where does she belong? Well, I have to be honest with you, I have not unlocked Yuumi yet. That means I have no experience of playing her in the Path of Champions. What I do know, however, is that Yuumi is kinda decent from the get-go. That's because she has access to +1 starring mana, game start, summon 2 random Poros, as well as the allies I fated. When you target a fated ally, granted an additional +1/+1. This means that she is probably going to be buffing up a lot of these units, and because she will be buffing up a lot of these units, pairing her with stuff that will give allies overwhelm could be a really good pick here. However, like I said, I still do not have her unlocked, which means I do not have any sufficient experience with her. I am inclined to put her in the B category, quite simply because her powers make her seem kinda decent, and at the same time she has the makings of a potential aggressive champion. Alright everyone, there you have it. This is my tier list for the champions here in the Path of Champions. I believe some of them could be reordered a little bit better, but overall I think it conveys the message across. Once again, this is my opinion on what I deem are good champions. Your opinion may vary, you may have a certain champion higher up and a certain champion further down, and vice versa. So I hope you enjoyed this video as well as spending your time here with me nerding out over the champions as well as ranking them, and if you did, consider leaving a like as well as subscribing to the channel. I really do appreciate your support, but most importantly it's so that you don't miss future episodes or uploads of Legends of Runeterra or Path of Champions content just like this one. And with that being said, this is Keflo signing off. Thank you all so much for watching, thanks for joining me, hopefully I catch you guys in the next one. Goodbye.